What's up guys, it's Drac, and this blaster is banned. Alright guys, so this is yet another prototype coming at us from a brand new company run by a couple of dudes. This is a very interesting take on a performance blaster, and this prototype, I believe, is the only one in the world right now. So this is the same one they're using for all of their testing and their sizzle reels, and we were lucky enough that they sent it out to us so that we could take an early sneak peek at it, see what's coming down the pipeline. And for some reason, it seems like all of the brand new prototypes we get our hands on are going this really clean, almost Apple aesthetic of like, let's do white and black, specifically with hexagons sometimes. I don't know, I think that this is very sharp. It's got orange in the right places, what with the muzzle and the jam door. And this one's actually printed up in nylon SLS and uses a lot of different parts that have been actually machined out of acetal, or Delrin is the name brand. It's the same stuff that I make my flywheels out of. And it's very interesting to see it on some of these parts, like the alternative pusher over here is machined Delrin, as is the trigger and the magazine release, at least the main magazine release. So it feels disingenuous not to note that with the obvious exception of the Spectrum taking the throne, the stryfe is the default in simple performance-based flywheel options. It's a single stage flywheeler with a rev trigger, a main trigger, a mag release, and no real frills or substance beyond that. And if you put them next to one another, it becomes very clear that the inspiration, the silhouette, everything here was design a better stryfe, build a better battleship. Now, I think that a lot of things that I dislike personally about the stryfe have been supremely corrected here. First off, battery space is limited in a stryfe. In this guy, you get plenty of room for a full-size battery. This is actually the same battery. It's 1500 milliamp hours with some pretty serious discharge coming in at 2S. Not only does it hold such a large battery, it also uses exclusively metric hardware, which is going to make it easier to take apart when you need to. But more to the point, you get a virtually completely symmetrical blaster. That's no flywheel cage bulge on the side, no one side painted, one side not. Like, they really didn't cheap out, at least in the prototyping stage here. Everything is mirrored on both sides. You have active cooling vents for both the flywheels as well as whatever size motor you want to put in this thing. Although I'm sure it will come with motors that achieve this performance. It's nice that it looks like everything is kind of hobby-esque. It's using 130, 180 sized cans, and it appears to be using standard size flywheels, although we'll get to that when we talk about the internals. Just being symmetrical alone is a very, very cool pro. It also has a lot of like features that can be derivated from the stryfe or just talked about in terms of how they're nice to have anyway. There's a sling point attachment on the back, as well as here, whether you want to go 1 or 2 point. The mag release is a strict improvement here, being easy to reach with your middle finger, quite comfortable in that regard. The trigger being a machined Delrin allows it to be much stronger, and so you can actually get a longer trigger pull and a more comfortable trigger in there. Interestingly enough, the longer trigger pull makes up for the fact that you might note that there is no rev switch on here. That is because this is using a deadman or a runaway or a nominally open switch here, so that when you pull, this releases a circuit so that it turns on, and then it engages a rack and pinion system at about here, and that's when it starts pushing. Oh, I forgot that I had a dart in there. So that's when it starts pushing in the rack and pinion system, a pusher forward. Now you can see this longer version is the half dart pusher using a mag forward worker adapter. We'll get to that in a minute. The only part of this that isn't symmetrical is actually a really nice feature to be default included on any electronic blaster, but particularly one using a LiPo like this with a performance focus like this. And that's not only it has a power switch, which I actually kind of like in this case, particularly with the runaway switch, and it has a constantly reading, constantly open voltmeter. That's a 3-digit voltmeter reading in at 8.45, which means that this LiPo is topped up and ready to go. Just before we get to the other thing, you guys hear that? Oh man, Jinx is not a fan. And she's pretty comfortable around blasters, but that's a pretty loud thwack coming off of this, which means we're gonna have to throw it over the chronograph. It's clearly got a lot under the hood to deliver. And then I guess the omission of the rev switch allows them to use whatever hardware they'd like for their main grip here. And they've gone with an AR-15 standard size grip that's of course got M5 hardware holding it in through the bottom. And while this one appears like they nylon printed it, because you know, if you have access to the technology to nylon print everything, why not? But in this case, you could put any grip on there. If you have an AR-15 grip that you're really fond of, you could spend as much or as little money. I mean, I think my Anderson manufacturing patch is missing, but I mean, you could grab a Poverty Pony grip for like $2. You could also get something very, very nice in whatever custom colors or compatibility you want. By virtue of being white, as long as we're talking about colors, the production version of this blaster would take paint very, very well. That means that it's essentially a blank slate, complete with hexagons, which are of course the best deco option out there. To paint it up or hydro dip it however you would like. This area here conceals a small kind of pseudo Picatinny rail. It's actually very similar, again taking its inspiration from the stryfe, but it'll come with a foregrip that you can slide over it, and you can use that as your grip if you'd like. Of course, you could change it out for a light, an optic, anything like that. You've got the same thing that the stryfe has going on in the back, where you could put, you know, a torch or a laser or an iron sight up here as well. Just a lot of options on this. It's clearly kind of hobby targeted. It's definitely a performance stryfe-esque semi-auto flywheeler. And the most important thing is going to be what kind of guts do we get on the inside, and then what kind of numbers are we going to get over the chronograph. So I could talk ad nauseum about how I really like the styling of it. Like I said, it's like Apple meets Beehive, and it is very, very clean, very nice. I could talk more about some of the different features that I like the massive battery space or the symmetrical features or the active cooling. But I think that it's time to talk about the guts. Let's crack it open and see what's inside. So when we take a look inside, it becomes abundantly clear that the Band Blasters team has a lot of design chops. Not only is this the kind and quality of prototype and material choices that we are used to seeing at Toy Fair and realistically nowhere else. The fact of the matter is the hobby just doesn't have the kind of machining and tooling to make a prototype one-off at this level at this point in time. And that's evident in all sorts of things, like I said, from the custom Delrin machined pushers here, as well as the variable pusher. This one, of course, being for full-length darts if you decide to go that route. But we're going to be testing the half-length dart variant, as we believe that it's definitely the more exciting, down to custom gears that are, again, machined acetal. And the hallmark of that is that acetal tends to be really cheap in black and white and very expensive in other colors. So anytime you see parts like that, it's pretty clear that that's how that was made. But very, very top shelf. Looking at this rack and pinion setup, you can see first off, there's lots of travel for this switch to be nominally open here, and it's a pretty robust switch in and of itself. It's a 21 amp switch. It might not necessarily be an Omron, but it's definitely in the standard size that we use in the hobby. Plenty of room there to leave it completely open all the time. And then once you're back here, you can see we engage that rack and pinion system, and we get very clean kind of pusher dynamic, good trigger pull feel, because both Delrin on Delrin is kind of self-lubricating almost. It's a very smooth interaction. And also just this is a well thought out one-off design. So I like that they can build their own gears. I like that they're not 3D printed and kind of crunchy like some of the hobby grade blasters are. These are very, very nice. I'm sure in production they'll just be, you know, injection molded ABS and be nice in the same sort of way. And then we move on to the real heart of this, because everything here makes sense, right? We've got our switch, we've got a couple of boards to regulate the voltmeter, and then we've got our XT60 connector. Again, all very popular features to have in a hobby grade blaster. The part that fascinates me is up here. You can see they've used a two-part construction to create a single bore flywheel cage, and it seems to be going into a Delrin barrel, which is their dart guide. And I can't help but notice some stuff. When I saw the original prototyping pictures and played with that, they had actually done some custom cutouts on their flywheels a la Nick's cage, at which point they revealed to me that the Nick's cage, as well as things like the Open Flywheel project by Phil, were heavy inspirations for how they worked on their heartbeat. And it seems like they've gone with a larger diameter flywheel than my traditional howlers, which is going to give them higher FPS performance. It's much closer to like the Twilight kind of geometry that we sell over on Foam Pro Shop. And then the addition of this extra piece here means that they're clearly, every bit of this blaster is designed for injection molding, because that's their eventual goal over at Band Blasters, from the draft angles on the speed feed lips here to the way that the cage is built in such a way that it could be injection molded as opposed to machined a la Nick's. This only works because it's a 3-op part on a CNC. This could clearly be done in a mold while still maintaining that sort of, oh, it's not gonna, wait, there you go. That single bore access, which makes your shots that much more accurate, as the cage itself acts as a guide into the stable barrel. So everything about this is really nice. It's hard to overstate just how much of a quality prototype this is. We're getting the pleasure in our space of dealing with more and more quality prototyping and just very, very polished production ready samples like this. And I couldn't be more excited to talk about it. That said, the last feature that I want to point out is this is in fact standard AR-15 style dealio. You can see they've got their set nut inside. This area seems to be pretty close to mil spec, and then an M5 bit of hardware there. So I'm pretty confident you could put anything you wanted on there. And then the one thing that I missed when I was talking about the blaster explicitly is, in addition to using metric hardware, which is nice, this is a heavily flared magwell down here, and it gives you a lot of corrective sway when you're trying to get this this in there. Of course, it is N-Strike standard, which means that you could fit any N-Strike full-length magazine in it, or some of the dedicated half-length magazines that have full-length geometry. However, I think that this adapter is a really, really good compromise somewhere in between. Let's take it downstairs. Let's put some half-length darts over the chronograph. Let's see what kind of performance we can expect from this beast. All right, guys, moment of truth. Like I said, these are cut down Adventure Force waffle tips. They tend to be pretty good in flywheelers, so we'll see what we've got going on. Again, a half pull is going to start the flywheel system, and then a full pull is going to be what actually pushes that dart into the cage itself. I might not have the rhythm down completely, so if you see me do 2 trigger pulls per dart, that's not a flaw with the product. That's like me getting used to it. But let's go ahead and see what we got. That's a duplicate 179. And then the interesting thing is, like, it's actually not destroying the darts themselves. That's kind of cool. So we know just from experience doing things with dual stage flywheels and single stage flywheels and what have you, that 170, 175 is usually about the threshold for a single stage flywheel system. But the caveat there is that it usually destroys the darts to go much higher than that. So this is actually very impressive. Let's put a few down range and just see kind of what we're working with there. Those were all pretty tight groupings. I hope that the camera could pick up that shooting at my 80-foot tree, we're getting everywhere from 85 to 90-foot ranges. And of course, we were hitting the tree most of the time. I have a magazine with some cut down AccuFakes over here, but I honestly don't even think that that's gonna be like necessary for a formal sort of take on this. I mean, it's a single stage, effectively fully modified, maxed out, glass ceilinged, whatever you wanna call it, stryfe that, you know, given a production version, would be out of the box injection molded, ready to go in that arena. How long it will take them to get to market, I don't know. I know from conversations with them that they were targeting a price point around $100, which, given what you would be getting, especially if it comes with the battery and what have you, and a charger for that battery, actually sounds like a really great deal. You're effectively getting, you know, hyper performance flywheel setup that just so happens to be in a strictly better than stryfe body with variable grip options and, you know, a voltmeter built in, and it's pretty cool. One of those broke 180? All right, so we have half a magazine left. Let's put a few of these down just as a curiosity. I do want to look down the barrels, and it looks like our flywheel alignment is also really good. Like, I mean, there's a lot of quality in this prototype, and the performance is no joke. I mean, this would be a ready-to-go competitive grade flywheel class blaster. Does it hit quite as hard as Springer's around that price point? No, but its rate of fire is objectively much, much higher. The amount of energy and effort you have to use to keep something like this stable is much less. Select fire could be, you know, one motor attached to that rack and pinion away in the future. I mean, I think that Band Blasters is seriously onto something. I like a lot of the features. It's clear that they've been paying very close attention to the hobby with the placement of the rails, the choice of using the stryfe kind of shape and shell, the inclusion of a voltmeter and a kill switch. This one-stage trigger is going to take some getting used to, but it will be really cool. And I actually like that they're getting this level of performance and this level of consistency without going to a full brushless build. While brushless is undoubtedly a very quality way to get variable performances and features out, when you really only want to do one thing, you should do that one thing very, very well. And this is a far more economically effective, build of material effective way of going about that. So I think that it definitely needs a name. I don't know what they're going to call this, but I'm going to be sad to put it back in the box because this is one cool performance blaster. I wish I had taken it to our SE&C war a couple of days back, because this is actually I don't. It would have hit too hard for the SE&C war at 180 FPS. It's certainly a serious piece of nerfing equipment. There's not much more to say about it. I mean, it's a very clean design, very smooth prototype, and I think that it has a lot of merits. So I highly recommend you click the link down in the description box below. They're shooting me over a link to, I guess, what they're gonna call their interest list or their landing page or their website, and we'll be able to follow along their journey of taking it from this into something that realistically could be like packed, shipped, and delivered to customers like us. So I think that it's really cool. Huge thanks to Band Blasters for sending this over so that I could make this video for you and show you their prototype. I think it's a great way to launch this product and announce it to the world. And huge thank you to viewers like you for supporting companies like this and making it possible to have an ever-increasing list of people making sporting grade quality hobby gear. I think that this thing is cool. Thanks for watching. Much love. Blast on. Drac out.